how do we fit in the whole semicon war between the United States and China, so-called semicon war? A lot of people are saying there's a lot of opportunity for the Philippines somewhere in that chain. Where is it? Do you see where it is, Ebb?
Yeah, I think, I don't like to use the word Silicon
Valley.
Semiconductor battle or war.
Maybe not a war.
Nobody wins a trade
Right.
war.
Maybe not a war, but Secretary Raimundo did say that she thinks the U.S. has concentrated its supply chain, chip supply chain, in too few countries. So now, if we were trying to find our place in that, what will we do?
I think I think there's a really bright, shining edge to this dark cloud, silver lining. I actually worked in the semiconductor industry for many, many years. I worked with Texas Instruments and such. So I had in Taiwan, for example, the silver lining to me is the fact that most semiconductor companies around the world are doing Taiwan plus one. They're never going to give up on Taiwan. That's the heart of the semiconductor industry in the world. They're going to continue to expand in Taiwan, but they're looking for Taiwan plus one.
Okay, so they'll diversify to another spot.
To another spot, so that if we have another COVID or another supply chain interruption, at least they're better for the future. And so that sets very well for the Philippines. We have 3 huge American semiconductor companies in this place. I know one of them, Texas Instruments, has announced plans to expand both their facility in Clark and in Subic. A couple of the other semiconductors are also discussing and looking into the probability of expanding here in the Philippines. This is good news. You know, this is something that's exciting that I think comes out of it. So, but it's a serious matter. We don't want. You know, I wish that the 2 countries could, China and the U.S. would find a better way to communicate and resolve this, because it's not healthy for the world economy, I don't think. But you know, overall, I mean, there is a silver lining there that I think the Philippines will benefit from it.
Okay, there's also this concept called the Luzon Economic Corridor, and that came out of the trilateral summit in Washington between the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines. What do you know about the Luzon Economic Corridor, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, first of all, let's just back up and talk about the to me, that's just great.
Is another landmark.
It's a whole landmark. When the Biden administration had the wisdom to put the 3 countries together and say, look, we got a common thing to talk about. And so when you put Japan, the United States, and the Philippines all into the room together and talk about, it was amazing. And of course, the hot topic came out of it was this North-South Economic Corridor. The beginning of that talk was several years ago, that they would build the rail from from Subic to Clark. And I had to question mark. I didn't quite understand, because the proximity was very close. Why don't you put it on the truck and just ship it over there?
Right.
Why would you need a rail? But then I've been educated. I learned more about it, and we had a good discussion a few weeks back. It seems that the current North-South corridor is to Clark, or Subic to Clark, Clark to maybe Northport, Northport to Batangas. And I went, that's interesting as well. Why don't you just, if you're going to Calabarzon, you ship it to Batangas. If you're NCR, maybe slightly south, slightly north, NCR, Northport. And then if you're going North Luzon, Clark, Subic, whatever, you put it into Subic. Then it become clear. What really is happening is the supply chain, the supply ships, want to make one stop. They can now have shipments going to Calabarzon, to Metro Manila, NCR, and North Luzon, and they make one stop, whether it be Subic, and they put it on the rail, it can go all the way to Batangas.
Right.
Or Batangas, the ship does no longer have to go Clark, or Subic, Northport, Batangas, or Batangas. They can make one stop, and it really makes sense. And all along this corridor will be the economic, where you got the growth, the job creations. So that's, I think, the economic side of it. One other thing, if you don't mind, I'd like to add, that's Clark New City. Now, we're talking about manufacturing or large areas. Those companies need 2 things for sure. They need a large space, 1 hectare, 2 hectares, 3 hectares, 4 hectares, and
Power.
they need and power. That's number 3, yeah. But they have that in Clark. It's really good. I've been up there and visited. But what they also need is access to a port. So when I met with Secretary Go, he explained, the Biden administration, the Marcos administration is really keen to make sure that that north-south corridor rail line has a spur going to Clark New City. Clark New City has 9,450 hectares.
It's massive.
It's massive. And it's very modern. It's really, really good shape. It's nice, beautiful facilities. And so companies wanting to invest in the Philippines should take a very good look. If you, not to say that Calabar Zone is full or something, but they're a little more expensive, land's more expensive, and they don't have quite the size needed for some of this.
Right.
So Clark New City to me is key, and it plays right into this north-south corridor.
Did they tell you when this whole, all the infra around that area will start, would start? Is there a timeline for that project?
It's not going to take long. Once you get, it's got to happen during the first term I would say under Marcos' administration by 2028, have it well underway.
Yep.
So,
the U.S. presidential elections is in a few months, in November. You think that's going to make a change, or has it effect on the economic ties that we have with the United States?
AmCham is nonpartisan. We don't play politics, whether it's in the Philippines or in the U.S. It would be not too wise. But the main thing we want and hope for is that this movement that we were seeing in the last couple of years, that economic situation continues regardless who wins the election. AmCham has worked, we're 120 years old. We've worked with every 120 years, every administration we've worked with, except for the Japanese during World War II, but we've worked with every one of them, and we'll continue no matter who wins in November. It'll continue. We just want this economic relationship that's been developed now in the last 2 years. We want that to continue.
Are there investors that are taking a wait-and-see approach to this, particularly since President Biden and President Trump have very different approaches to Southeast Asia? President Biden, as you underscored, has made a big effort to embrace the region, whereas President Trump has turned the country more insular, more inward-looking. So as you talk to these investors, is there anyone that's sitting on the sidelines just waiting to see what happens?
Not yet. The investment, we're talking, $500 million or something. People that are going to put that much money in don't necessarily got a timeline or care about who's in Washington or what. It's a long-term investment. You got to look and see what your return on investment is going to be, what are the conditions to it. So if you look at issues like the West Philippine Sea and what's going on out there, some people say, well, is that an issue for investors? Not so far. It's a serious issue. Everybody's concerned about it. But for investment-wise, it's really not such, it's too long-term. They're looking at big investments. They do their due diligence. They look at what the geopolitical risk and weighs all of that and puts it into it. And so I don't think right now it's not an issue.
It's all about the returns.
Yeah, and right now it's all about the return. And so right now I don't know of any investors just wait and see for the elections or any of the other items. So.